The learner, welcome back. You're here because you want to get to the heart of things, right? You want that core understanding. You don't want to get lost in the weeds. And we get that. That's why we do these deep dives.
Uh,
Today we're diving into a book that's, well, it sparked a lot of discussion, to put it mildly. Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
right. This one is not your typical self-help book. This is a study of power dynamics drawn from history, and it offers some pretty sharp, sometimes unsettling observations about how the world works.
Our mission today is to really extract those crucial strategies that Green presents in these laws for gaining and maintaining influence. So think of this as getting the insider's perspective on how power operates, whether you're trying to navigate your workplace, understand historical events, or just kind of satisfy your curiosity about human behavior.
We're not necessarily endorsing everything in this book, right?
Exactly. We're here to understand it.
Yeah.
And what's really key for you is we'll be focusing on those actionable insights, those surprising angles that can really change the way you see things. So are you ready to jump in? I am. Let's do it. Let's tackle that very first law. Never outshine the master. Now, on the surface, you would think showing off your capabilities would be a good thing.
Yeah, that's the common assumption.
Right.
But Green actually argues it can be pretty dangerous. The basic idea is that making those above you feel secure in their superiority is absolutely crucial.
Makes sense.
If you accidentally make them feel threatened or insecure by being too talented,
Yeah.
it can really backfire.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not just about hiding your light.
Right.
It's about carefully directing it in a way that aligns with the ego needs of those in power.
You know, it's a great example of this, Galileo and the Medicis. So instead of making them feel like they didn't understand the cosmos, he actually connected their name to these huge discoveries,
Right.
essentially making them appear even more magnificent by association.
That's a really good point. He amplified their prestige.
Yeah.
Now, contrast that with Nicolas Fouquet, Louis XIV's finance minister.
Okay.
He built this lavish estate, which was a sign of his success,
Sure.
but it arguably eclipsed the king's own residences.
Oh.
The consequence for that imprisonment.
Wow.
So it's a pretty stark example of how outshining can be perceived as a threat.
Yeah. So it's not about dimming your light, but it's about making sure it reflects positively on those above you.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a subtle flattery, maybe acting a little less knowledgeable than you are, making them feel like their guidance is really essential.
Yeah, it's a form of strategic humility.
Strategic humility. I like that. But what specific behaviors could actually signal this kind of helpful humility without seeming inept? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great point. You want to strike a balance.
Yeah.
It's about emphasizing their experience, asking for their advice, even on things you might already know,
Right.
and publicly crediting their insights when you succeed. Make them feel like they're the mentor.
The guide.
Exactly. The guide whose wisdom is invaluable.
So, the learner, think about times when you've needed to influence someone in authority. How could you apply this principle of strategic humility?
Now let's move on to law number 2. This one's a doozy. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies.
Okay. This one raises eyebrows for sure.
Yeah, it goes against our natural instincts.
Right, because we think of friends as our support system, the
Darn it.
people we rely on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Green suggests they can actually be the very ones who might undermine us.
Yeah. Okay, but isn't there a risk of alienating everyone if you're constantly suspicious even of friends?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. Green isn't saying you should be paranoid.
Right.
It's more about a realistic assessment of motivations.
Okay.
He argues that friends can be more easily swayed by emotions,
Oh, see.
by feelings of entitlement or even envy that might be hidden beneath the surface.
Yeah,
And they also know your weaknesses really well.
that's true.
Enemies, on the other hand, offer a strange kind of reliability.
How so?
They oppose you.
Okay.
So their actions become more predictable. And in a strategic sense, that predictability can actually be more valuable than the emotional volatility of friends.
That's interesting. He gives that example of Chinese emperors being surrounded by potential adversaries almost as like a natural state of being.
Yeah,
It kept them sharp and constantly aware.
exactly. And Mao Zedong's strategy during the Japanese invasion is another great example. He didn't just see it as a fight against Japan.
Oh, interesting.
He saw it as a training ground for his forces for the later conflict with the nationalists.
Wow. So he was using that external enemy to get ready for a future one.
Exactly.
Okay, so this law also touches on a darker side,
Yeah.
using friends for like unpleasant tasks
Yeah.
or as scapegoats.
Right.
But like Green points out, the cost of doing that is you lose that friendship.
You do. There's also the perspective that keeping enemies engaged can help you maintain your edge.
Yeah.
Their opposition can force you to refine your strategies
Right.
and prevent you from becoming complacent. It's a constant pressure that can actually drive improvement.
Okay, so that leads us to a seemingly contradictory idea then,
Yeah.
which is how can you identify potential useful enemies in your own field or situation? So you're saying like competitors?
Competitors who keep you on your toes.
Okay.
And it's not about fostering hatred.
Right.
It's about recognizing who provides a consistent, predictable challenge that you can actually learn from.
So it's about leveraging that opposition strategically.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about law number 4, always say less than necessary. I feel like this one is so relevant today.
Yeah, in our information-saturated world, this is huge.
Right, because we're constantly communicating.
We are.
So being deliberate with silence and conciseness can be really powerful.
Green says the more you speak, the more common you appear, and the less control you have over the situation.
The less mystique there is.
Yeah, it's fascinating how brevity can actually impact perception and create this aura of authority.
Right. Like leaving things unsaid almost makes your ideas seem more profound.
Exactly.
Even if they're actually really simple. Powerful people don't over-explain.
Right.
Yeah.
They command attention by being selective with their words.
I love that anecdote about Tsar Nicholas I and the rebel Ryliev. So after the hanging failed, Ryliev made this witty remark.
He did.
But it ended up revealing too much of his spirit, and it cost him his second chance.
His words were clever, but they actually undermined his position.
Yeah, whereas strategic silence like Zhuge Liang used to intimidate Sima Yi can be incredibly potent.
The unspoken can be very powerful.
But too much silence can also breed suspicion, right?
Absolutely. Green suggests that sometimes playing the fool, talking a lot, but saying very little of substance,
Okay.
can be a way to deflect scrutiny without arousing suspicion.
So it's almost like blending in.
Yeah, while still maintaining your inner reserve.
Okay, so the learner, think about your communication. Where could being more selective with your words give you an advantage? Where could revealing less be more beneficial?
Let's talk about law number 5. So much depends on reputation, Guard. It's your life.
This one seems like a cornerstone in pretty much every field.
It's about building that unshakable image.
Yeah. But are there situations where reputation is less important than others?
That's an interesting question. While a good reputation is a huge asset,
Yeah.
there might be some cases like in really fast-paced, constantly changing environments where immediate results might temporarily outweigh your past actions.
Okay.
But even then, a damaged reputation can be hard to recover from.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Green sees reputation as the foundation of power.
Right.
A solid reputation can intimidate rivals and help you secure victories without even having to directly engage.
Interesting.
Conversely, a tarnished reputation leaves you incredibly vulnerable.
It does.
And he stresses the importance of proactively managing your reputation.
Right.
You need to actively build the image you want to project and quickly address anything that threatens it.
And be ready to undermine the reputations of your adversaries.
Exactly. You can sow doubt subtly and let public opinion take over. It's a powerful, but potentially ruthless strategy.
I mean, P.T. Barnum is like the poster child for this. He understood that all press is good press.
Right. He knew the controversy could actually build his brand.
It did. And he was really good at discrediting his competitors.
You would spread rumors and innuendo to damage their image.
So in the world of power and influence, perception can often be more important than reality.
It can.
The learner, how actively do you manage your reputation? What steps do you take to protect it, both professionally and personally?
Okay, let's dive into law number 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark.
Oh, this one's juicy.
This is all about playing into people's egos.
Because nobody likes to feel dumber than the person they're dealing with, right?
Exactly. It's a huge ego blow.
Right.
So the strategy here is to make your target feel intellectually superior.
Oh, I see.
Once they believe they're the smartest person in the room, they become much less suspicious of your motives.
Okay, that makes sense. The story about Arnold and Slack and the diamond mine is such a great illustration.
It is.
These guys were able to convince seasoned geologists and investors
Experienced people.
that this mine was legitimate because they came across as so naive.
Right.
They played the fool.
Nobody suspected these seemingly simple guys of orchestrating such a complex fraud.
It's amazing.
Their feigned ignorance was their most powerful tool.
It disarmed everyone.
Yeah, it blinded them to the deception.
So the learner, think about situations where appearing less knowledgeable could actually give you an advantage. Maybe there are times when feigning ignorance might be a good strategy to throw people off the scent.
Right.
It's like disarming suspicion through perceived ineptitude.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, now for law number 29, plan all the way to the end. This is all about foresight.
It is Green believes the ending is everything.
Really?
He says you need to plan with the end in mind.
So you need to consider all the potential outcomes, all the obstacles.
From the very beginning, think about the potential pitfalls and unforeseen events right from the outset.
Okay, so planning helps you avoid getting overwhelmed.
It does.
And more importantly, it helps you figure out when to stop.
Right. So many ambitions fail because of a lack of long-term vision.
Yeah, he contrasts Balboa's discovery of the Pacific with his ultimate failure to secure his position
Right.
and anticipate the challenges he would face.
He achieved something incredible,
He did.
but he didn't plan for the long-term consequences.
Whereas Cesar Borgia was known for his meticulous planning and his ruthless execution.
He was always steps ahead.
Yeah, and that old saying, never begin anything until you have reflected what will be the end of it.
That pretty much sums up this law.
Yeah, so the learner, when you're starting a new project, how thoroughly do you consider the whole trajectory, the potential pitfalls, the ultimate outcome you want?
Good question.
Now let's move on to law number 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. This is about presentation.
It's about managing perception.
Right. The idea is that your achievement should look natural, almost easy.
You want to conceal all the hard work and meticulous preparation.
Right. Like Houdini.
Exactly. Houdini's act was the impossible possible.
Right.
Audiences were blown away by his escapes, but they never saw all the hours of practice, all the ingenious mechanisms he used.
He made it look so effortless.
That was the point. He cultivated this image of effortless mastery.
It's fascinating.
And then there's the story of Ninon de Lenclos, who orchestrated the Marquis's pursuit of the Countess
Okay.
to make it seem like he wasn't even trying,
Oh, wow.
which of course made the Countess even more intrigued.
So it was all a carefully constructed illusion?
It was.
Green says you shouldn't reveal all your effort
Right.
because it can actually diminish the perceived value of what you've accomplished.
People admire things that seem natural and graceful.
So the learner, how can you highlight your successes without revealing all the behind-the-scenes struggles?
It's about creating that aura of competence and natural ability.
Okay, next up, law number 43, work on the hearts and minds of others.
This one's all about persuasion.
So the idea is that forcing people to do what you want will probably just create resentment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you can understand their desires and beliefs, you can influence them in a much more effective way.
And that leads to genuine cooperation.
Right. It's about knowing what motivates them, what they're vulnerable to, what they value, and what they fear.
Yeah,
You want to soften their resistance by appealing to their emotions.
like Isabella d'Este did with Cesare Borgia.
She was a master of this.
She used flattery, and she understood his ambitions to protect Mantua.
She knew how to appeal to his ego.
Green says that if you ignore the hearts and minds of others, you'll probably just create more enemies.
True influence comes from understanding what drives people.
Yeah. So, the learner, how deeply do you understand the motivations of the people around you? Could you leverage that understanding to build stronger influence?
Now let's talk about something else. Green highlights in the book the strategic advantage of appearing nonchalant and creating desire.
So it's kind of like what Ninon de Lenclos was saying about creating distance to make yourself more desirable.
Exactly.
It's counterintuitive.
It is. But when you make someone believe they might not be able to have you, it creates a sense of urgency.
Oh.
They want you even more because your attention suddenly feels more valuable.
It becomes a challenge.
Right. It's like the thrill of the chase.
And then there's the tactic of creating jealousy
Oh, yeah.
by subtly showing that other people are interested in you.
It plays on that fear of missing out,
Totally.
and it makes you seem more desirable.
So, the learner, how could you create this sense of desirable distance in your interactions? Whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, it's about managing those dynamics.
Yeah,
Green also talks about the danger of overreacting and the power of staying calm.
right. He contrasts Napoleon's angry outbursts with Talleyrand's calm, dismissive responses.
Right.
When you get angry, you reveal your weaknesses.
True.
But nonchalance can actually disarm your opponent and help you stay in control.
It's like Talleyrand's response to Napoleon's insults.
You just brush them off.
He made Napoleon look bad.
Exactly. It was a brilliant display of composure.
The learner, how could you practice being more emotionally controlled in challenging situations? Do you think that could make you stronger?
It could.
Okay. And finally, let's discuss strategic generosity.
This isn't just about being nice.
No, it's a calculated move.
It can help you build influence.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to overcome distrust or establish yourself.
Right. It can help you create a network of support.
The example of Baron de Rothschild is so interesting.
He basically threw money around
Yeah.
to show his appreciation for French culture.
But then there's that contrasting example with Akimoto Suzutomo.
Yeah, he got upset with his page for haggling over the price of a tea bowl.
Right. He thought it made him look cheap.
Exactly. It was about the impression it gave, not just the money.
So sometimes being too frugal can send the wrong message.
It can. Strategic generosity is about showing that you're not afraid to spend money.
It projects an image of abundance.
And it builds goodwill.
Right. So the learner, how could you use generosity strategically to build relationships and enhance your influence?
Think about ways you can be generous without seeming calculating.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into the 48 laws of power, we've explored all kinds of strategies,
We have, from managing relationships to understanding enemies,
from the power of words to the importance of reputation.
and all those subtle ways you can influence people's perceptions.
It's a lot to process.
It is.
And as we said at the beginning, this isn't necessarily a guide to being a good person.
Right. These are just observations about how power works.
Yeah, it's about understanding human nature
Your own and other people's.
and being aware of how you come across to the world.
Exactly.
So here's a final thought for you, the learner. Now that you have a deeper understanding of these laws, how do you see the world differently? How do you see those everyday interactions and those power dynamics playing out?
Good question.
What long-term strategies might you start using
Yeah,
based on this knowledge?
think about it.
And we encourage you to go back and read the 48 Laws of Power for yourself.
There's so much we didn't have time to cover.
It's really a fascinating book.
It is. Until next time, keep observing
Good learning.
and keep questioning.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.
Take care.